Most epic fantasy dialogue sounds impressive, but feels strangely forgettable after reading. You might not notice it at first, but something always feels missing underneath. Characters speak, yet their words rarely feel like they belong to their world. The problem is not imagination, but lack of true voice and intention. Many writers focus on plot, while ignoring how characters actually express themselves. But in fantasy, dialogue is not decoration. It is world building in disguise. Every sentence should reveal culture, power, history, or hidden emotional tension. Without that depth, even magical worlds start feeling strangely empty and flat. Imagine a king speaking exactly like a modern teenager in casual conversation. The illusion breaks instantly, no matter how strong the story concept is. Readers stop believing the world because the voices do not match reality. Epic fantasy demands language that feels shaped by centuries of history. Every kingdom, empire, and tribe should have its own rhythm of speech. Yet most stories ignore this detail and reuse the same neutral tone everywhere. That sameness slowly drains emotion from even the most dramatic scenes. Dialogue becomes functional instead of immersive, carrying information but no soul. And once readers notice this pattern, immersion becomes harder to rebuild again. The truth is, great fantasy dialogue feels almost like listening to myth. It carries weight beyond words, as if every sentence has consequences attached. Characters do not just speak, they reveal who they are through speech. A warrior's silence can be as powerful as a wizard's long explanation. A queen's words may feel like law even in casual conversation. But achieving this effect requires more than just writing fancy vocabulary. It requires understanding how emotion, power, and world building intersect in dialogue. Most writers overlook this intersection and focus only on sounding epic. But epic tone alone is not enough to create memorable conversations. Readers remember impact, not decoration, in character interactions and exchanges. A single sharp line can sometimes define a character forever in memory, while pages of dialogue may be forgotten if they lack emotional tension. The real secret lies in making every exchange feel like a choice. Characters should always want something during conversations, even if unspoken. Desire creates friction, and friction creates memorable dialogue moments instantly. Without desire, dialogue becomes static and emotionally lifeless very quickly. Fantasy worlds offer endless opportunities to embed meaning inside every conversation. Yet many writers miss this chance by focusing only on exposition delivery. They use dialogue to explain lore instead of revealing personality or conflict. This turns powerful worlds into simple information exchanges between characters. But dialogue should never feel like a history lesson or manual explanation. It should feel like survival, negotiation, manipulation, or emotional struggle instead. Even simple greetings can carry hidden threats or political tension underneath. Every word should serve both story and character at the same time. That dual purpose is what separates average writing from unforgettable fantasy. Readers should feel like they are overhearing real conversations inside another world, not reading scripted explanations designed only to move the plot forward. The best fantasy dialogue always hides more than it reveals directly. Mystery within speech keeps readers engaged and emotionally invested throughout scenes, because humans naturally lean toward understanding what is left unsaid. That psychological pull is what makes dialogue feel alive and powerful. Once you understand this, writing conversations becomes far more intentional and layered. You stop writing what characters say and start writing why they say it. And that shift changes everything about how fantasy dialogue feels on page. Suddenly, every exchange carries tension, meaning, and emotional undercurrents beneath surface. Even silence becomes meaningful when used with purpose and narrative awareness. Readers begin sensing depth even in the simplest conversational moments presented. That is when fantasy worlds truly begin to feel real and immersive. But understanding this concept is only the first step toward mastery, because writing compelling dialogue requires more than awareness. It requires technique, and those techniques can completely transform how your characters come alive. In the next part, we will explore how voice actually gets built and how small changes in speech can define entire fantasy civilizations. If you're ready, say part 2, and I'll con. To write epic fantasy dialogue well, you must first understand character voice deeply. Voice is not just what a character says, but how they naturally say it. Every character should feel like they grew up in a completely different world, because in fantasy, even shared lands contain multiple cultures and conflicting identities. A knight raised in honor speaks differently from a mercenary raised in survival. Their words carry different rhythms shaped by upbringing, struggle, and belief systems. One speaks in restraint, while the other speaks in sharp, direct urgency. This contrast alone can make conversations feel alive and unpredictable instantly. Readers subconsciously pick up these differences without needing explicit explanation from author. That is the power of consistent and intentional voice design in storytelling. Many writers mistakenly give all characters similar sentence structures and pacing. This creates confusion and removes individuality from important narrative interactions. But when voices differ, even simple dialogue becomes rich with meaning layers. A mage might pause mid-sentence as if thinking through ancient knowledge, while a soldier speaks in complete, immediate declarations without hesitation or doubt. These patterns reveal personality more effectively than direct description ever could. Fantasy dialogue becomes stronger when speech reflects environment and lived experience. A desert-born character may use metaphors involving heat, sand, and survival. A forest dweller might reference growth, silence, or hidden movement instead. These subtle differences build a living world through conversation alone. Language itself becomes a reflection of geography and cultural identity systems. Even word choice can hint at social class or political allegiance clearly. Nobles might speak with controlled elegance and layered politeness in sentences. Common folk may speak more bluntly, prioritizing meaning over decorative phrasing. Neither is better, but both reveal different survival environments shaping speech. Dialogue becomes a mirror reflecting how characters interact with their reality. When done correctly, readers can guess background without being told directly. This creates immersion because discovery feels natural instead of forced exposition. Another key element is emotional restraint in fantasy dialogue writing style. Not every emotion should be spoken openly or directly expressed immediately. In many fantasy worlds, expressing emotion too freely can signal weakness, so characters learn to hide feelings beneath controlled language and subtle phrasing. This creates tension between what is said and what is truly felt. That tension is what makes conversations feel layered and psychologically rich. A character might say something polite while secretly meaning something dangerous. This dual meaning keeps readers engaged and constantly interpreting underlying intent. Dialogue becomes a puzzle rather than a simple exchange of information. Readers start reading between lines instead of just following surface meaning. This engagement is what transforms average scenes into memorable storytelling moments. Even allies may speak carefully when trust is uncertain or fragile. That uncertainty adds depth to relationships without needing external conflict events. Language becomes a battlefield where control and dominance are constantly tested. Even silence between lines can suggest hidden disagreement or emotional distance. Well-written fantasy dialogue uses absence of speech as powerfully as speech itself. Another important aspect is rhythm, which shapes how dialogue feels when read. Short sentences create urgency, while longer sentences suggest thoughtfulness or control. Mixing both creates natural flow that mirrors real human conversation patterns. But fantasy dialogue is elevated, so rhythm must feel intentional, not random. Each character should have predictable unpredictability in how they speak, meaning their voice is consistent but still capable of emotional variation. This balance makes characters feel real without losing narrative structure clarity. Readers begin recognizing characters not just visually, but through speech alone. That recognition is a sign of strong and well-developed dialogue writing. At this stage, world and voice begin merging into a single system. Characters no longer just exist inside the world. They express the world itself. Their speech carries history, culture, and emotional weight simultaneously in conversations. But voice alone is not enough to create truly epic dialogue scenes, because conflict must also live inside every meaningful exchange between characters. The best fantasy dialogue isn't when characters say what they mean. I've been writing epic fantasy for years, and here's what I keep coming back to. Real power comes from conflict, hiding beneath polite words. When a knight says, "I'll consider it," that might actually mean no. But the king hearing those same words might think it's obedience. That gap between what's said and what's meant, that's where the magic happens. Even silence can be a weapon when a character refuses to answer. Because in fantasy, every conversation carries risk, and one wrong word can start a war. Shouted accusation. Emotional weight grows when characters finally reveal what they have been hiding. That moment of vulnerability transforms the tone of entire relationships instantly. Readers remember emotional honesty far more than elaborate speeches or descriptions. This is because truth creates connection between character and audience deeply. Even villains become memorable when their words reveal emotional complexity beneath actions. Resolution in dialogue does not always mean agreement or peace between sides. Sometimes resolution simply means understanding has been reached, even without harmony. Two characters may still disagree but now fully understand each other's position. That shift alone can change how future interactions unfold between them. In fantasy, resolution often comes with lingering tension rather than complete closure. This keeps the world feeling alive and continuously evolving beyond single scenes. Emotional aftermath is just as important as the dialogue itself in storytelling. What characters feel after speaking matters as much as what they said. Silence after conversation often carries heavier emotional weight than dialogue itself. It allows readers to absorb consequences and reflect on meaning deeply. A well-written ending to dialogue should always leave emotional resonance behind. That resonance is what transforms simple scenes into unforgettable storytelling moments. Another key aspect of impact is character transformation through conversation experience. A character should never leave a meaningful dialogue exactly the same. something subtle or significant should shift within their perspective or understanding. That internal change is what gives dialogue long-term narrative value. Even small realizations can guide future decisions and emotional growth. Fantasy dialogue becomes powerful when it shapes identity over time gradually. The world reacts not just to actions, but also to spoken choices. Words in epic fantasy often carry magical or political consequences simultaneously. This amplifies the importance of every conversational decision characters make. Readers begin to anticipate impact even before it fully unfolds on page. That anticipation creates emotional engagement and narrative tension throughout story arcs. Impactful dialogue often ends with a shift in power dynamics between characters. One character may gain control, while another loses confidence or authority. These shifts redefine relationships without needing physical confrontation or violence. Instead, language itself becomes the tool of conflict and resolution combined. This makes dialogue one of the most powerful storytelling instruments available. When done correctly, conversations feel like battles fought with meaning instead of weapons, and every victory or loss feels deeply personal and emotionally significant. Readers remember not just what was said, but what it changed forever. The lasting memory is the true goal of epic fantasy dialogue writing, because stories are ultimately measured by emotional impact, not just events. Even the smallest exchange can echo across entire narrative timelines. This echo is what gives fantasy worlds their sense of depth and realism. Without it, dialogue becomes temporary and forgettable very quickly. With it, every conversation becomes a turning point in the story's soul. And now we move into how to bring everything together in final mastery. At this point, the story of melting glaciers becomes a story about humanity itself. Oceans are no longer distant forces. They are shaping our daily existence directly. What happens in frozen polar regions now determines future life everywhere globally. The hidden truth is that Earth is responding to human activity as one system. Glacier melt is not isolated. It is part of a global transformation process. Every rise in sea level represents a shift in planetary balance systems. The ocean is recording every mistake and every delay in climate response action. This is why scientists emphasize urgency more strongly than ever before today. Because the changes already underway cannot simply be reversed quickly anymore now. However, understanding this system gives us power to influence future outcomes. Awareness is the first step toward meaningful environmental responsibility and action globally. Individuals often underestimate how their choices connect to ocean climate systems. Energy consumption, waste, and emissions all eventually reach oceans indirectly worldwide. The glaciers respond to warming, and oceans respond to glaciers simultaneously. This chain reaction is now fully active and accelerating across Earth systems. But the future is not completely fixed or beyond human influence yet. Collective action can still slow down the speed of glacier loss significantly. Policy changes, innovation, and awareness can reshape environmental trajectories over time. Renewable energy adoption reduces pressure on warming systems driving ice melt. Restoring balance requires global cooperation across nations and industries working together. Coastal planning must integrate climate science into every development decision now. Education plays a crucial role in helping societies understand ocean changes. When people understand consequences, they begin to make better environmental choices. The ocean does not forget, but it can still respond to change. Glacier preservation efforts are becoming more important than ever in history. Protecting polar regions helps stabilize global ocean systems for future generations. Every fraction of reduced warming slows the chain reaction significantly over time. Science gives us tools, but action determines their effectiveness in reality. The question is no longer whether change is happening, but how fast. Humanity now stands at a critical intersection of decision and consequence globally. Future generations will judge how we responded to this ocean transformation. The glaciers we lose today reshape oceans our children will inherit tomorrow. This makes climate responsibility not optional, but essential for survival. Oceans are both warning us and reflecting our global environmental choices clearly. What seems like distant ice melt is actually a mirror of human behavior. The deeper message is that Earth systems are interconnected beyond simple understanding. No region is truly isolated from effects of melting glaciers anymore. Even small changes can ripple across oceans into global consequences rapidly. But awareness transforms fear into action when guided by knowledge correctly. Every individual has a role in shaping environmental outcomes collectively worldwide. Small efforts combined create large-scale environmental impact over time significantly. Reducing emissions helps slow down glacier loss and ocean transformation processes. Supporting climate research helps us better understand these hidden systems deeply. The ocean is not an enemy, but a system in distress. It reflects imbalance created over centuries of industrial development globally now. Restoring balance means working with nature rather than against it always. The melting glaciers are a signal, not just a scientific measurement alone. They are Earth's way of communicating urgency to all living beings. Listening to that signal is the first step toward meaningful change. The future of oceans depends on decisions being made right now. Time is not infinite, but action still holds power today strongly. Humanity still has the ability to influence Earth's next chapter significantly, but that influence depends on collective awareness and responsibility together globally. The ocean is changing, but so can human direction and choices. Every action today shapes the stability of tomorrow's ocean systems worldwide. This is not just environmental science, it is human survival knowledge. Understanding glaciers and oceans means understanding the future of civilization itself. The story does not end here. It continues with every decision made. And the final truth is that we are part of this ocean system. What we choose next will define the planet for generations to come.